Friends, I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to my channel. I have a lot of bracelets on my arm. This is the one that I was wearing today, but I wanted to share this one with you because my project for today is going to be updating this design. So this is the Pantone color for 2024, Peach Fuzz, and some of its coordinating colors. And I did a cuff bracelet using memory wire, and I put a chain here with a magnetic clasp. And that was because I really wanted to make sure it stayed on my arm because I used a little bit larger scale beads for this. So I'm going to update this in a couple of ways. This clasp is going to change, and I'm going to premise this design by saying I haven't tried it yet. I didn't do a prototype, but what my plan is, I have a few choices here of buttons. I'm kind of leaning toward one that I found on a bead shopping trip, but I have a few here. This is the one that I'm leaning toward. It was from Jennifer Weil Studios, and so if you are going to try this, let me try it first so I save you some time. I can tell you if it works, but I need a shank button, and so what I'm planning to do is on my last couple of rows that I make is to string the shank right onto the wire before it's attached. And then I have these left over from my first project. And if I didn't mention, I am using the January 2025 dollar bead box and bag for this project, and there's probably going to be more to come. I just love it so much. So this was left over from my first project. It's just the little 3mm check glass faceted rounds in the carnation color. And so what I'm thinking is that this is going to be a loop that is also strung right on to the other side of the bracelet, and instead of chain and a magnetic clasp, that I could just loop this right over, and that would be my clasp. But I also have the possibility of these two little shank buttons too. So I just wanted to show you that because I'm going to be working with those beautiful beads from this month's dollar bead box and bag, and I'm going to go up to the 4mm in all of those yummy colors. So now you see why I have these button choices out here. They all look great, and this would be my little loop going over any of my button closures. I really think it's going to work. I hope it does. If it doesn't, I actually have some scraps of chain right here and beautiful magnetic clasp that I can repeat the design. But the other update that I'm going to do is I'm going to be using oval memory wire instead of the round memory wire. So this is oval bracelet memory wire, and I've cut 2 links, and I just made, I don't know if you can see because it's a little bit fine, but I just made my cuts in the same place on both sides. It's not super crucial because there is the possibility to adjust, and I've already done 2 of the little bars. So this one is going to be about the same width, maybe not quite as wide by just a little bit, and I really quite like the negative space on this. So I did crystal bicones as my spacer when I was stringing these bars, but I think I'm going to seed beads for this one and maybe make a little pattern with this beautiful dyed opaque carnation pink and the same gold seed beads that I've used in this. And I am going to be using my Soft Flex 20 gauge wire, and I've already cut some of my little bars that I have to make because I have to make quite a few of them. There was 19 of them on this bangle bracelet, and of course you can do less if you make your spaces here wider and you have more negative space. If you make these spaces tighter, you may need more of your bridges. We'll call these bridges. And so, but this one's going to be really simple because I'm going to do the same pattern for every single one of my bridges on this one, where on this one I wanted to pull in all the different tones and shades of the peach fuzz and add in some pearls. So I really had to work out all the different patterns to end up being the same length, because you want parallel lines when you do a bracelet like this. If you have one a bit shorter, one a bit longer, and they're all a little bit different, you won't have these two parallel lines giving you the a nice cuff. So this one was a little bit more involved to work out all these different patterns to be exactly the same, where this one is going to be much easier. They are all going to be, all my bars are going to be the same millimeter of these check glass faceted rounds, and there's going to be 3, 4, 5, 7 beads on every one. So I'll string 2 a seed bead, 3 a seed bead, and 2, and make simple loops. So this is going to be super easy. The color will change, but that's the pattern all the way through the bracelet. And then when I start to string it, these are going to be my stringing things instead of the crystal bicones. And I think this is going to be a really pretty update. So love my soft flex wire. The 20 gauge works great. There'll be another chance to make these really straight. It's kind of important. I think I like to start with a nice straight bar. And I'm just going to cut. I don't know why my hand is twisted like that, but I'm just going to cut these all about the same length. And again, it's not crucial because I'm going to be using my 1.5 millimeter one-step looper to make all these loops. And I love that when I have a lot to do, because it really saves my hand, but also all my loops are really consistent. There's no variation. And when I string them and line them all up like on a bracelet like this, they are just great. So I'm going to set my buttons and my loop beads, my looping beads aside, and kind of wait until I have figured out exactly what I want to do for the clasp. I can't really play with that until I get some of these little bars made. So I'm going to dump out seed beads to work with. And I just found that the texture on my beading mat was making it a little bit difficult for me to pick up seed beads. So I've been using this wonderful little tray, and I am going to cut these open. Let's see, I am going to use this entire strand. So I'll go ahead and work with this one first. And like I said, on this particular bracelet, as opposed to the one that I did for 2024, the stringing will be super simple because I don't have all the varying patterns. So I'll show you what my little bars are going to look like. 1.5 millimeter one-step looper. I'll take one of my wires that I just cut. When you don't have beads on your wire, you don't need to go through the guide hole in the back, because the tool makes a cut right here and it just wastes 1/2 inch of wire. I get a lot of questions about this tool. If you are having issues with it not closing your loops, sometimes it is the way that you put your wire in the tool. So if you lay your wire against this back plate here, like it's tight against there, and if you make sure that your wire is past this back jaw, because that's where it makes the cut, you're not wasting any wire, and then makes that cut for you. There's your little piece. So that is a nice fresh cut. It's blunt. You don't have to do that with your cutters. You can skip that step. Then close the tool, and now I can see that my wire is going off in this direction. It's not centered on my loop. So I'm going to pull it down, and here's where I take my opportunity to make my bridge. Whoops. Slipped out of my hand. Here's where I take my opportunity, either with my fingers or my nylon jaw pliers, or even both. Warm, straighten, smooth the wire, and I can see now that this loop is centered, like the wire is coming right to the center of the loop, and when I take it away, I have an absolutely perfect little loop. And so for me, I tend to put my pliers, it's closed perfectly, but I like to just, with a little bit of force, open and close my pliers on my loops to work harden them. And then I'm just going to do this simple stringing of two of the 4 millimeter check glass beads. And what I think that I might have to do is, for this part where I'm planning to string a button shank, is maybe my last 2 rows on each side being just a row of seed beads. I am going to play with that when I get to that part, but I'm just kind of sharing. I've been working this out in my head for literally for weeks. So to finish this little bridge, I have my, for this particular project, I want all of the opening of my loops to be on the same side. So all my simple loops going in the same direction. And the reason for that is when they get strung onto the memory wire, I want my bridges to be seamless. So this is the top of the bracelet, so all of those openings will be on the inside, and it just makes your beaded bridge just completely seamless. So it's just a detail. Maybe nobody else would ever notice, but for me, I love adding quality to my work, you know, wherever it's possible. So now back to the one-step looper. I'm holding this where the opening is up, and I'm going to come back with my one-step looper. If your wire's long enough at this point, you can put it through the guide hole, but I don't need to waste that wire. So as long as that is to the back of the tool and, you know, just underneath that mandrel, I am going to gently close here so that I can make sure that I'm in the right spot here, not putting excessive pressure on my beads, that about 1 millimeter of space. Close it gently. It makes that nice fresh cut. It's making the loop. I'm controlling, I'm not popping this tool closed, I'm controlling it here. And then as it closes, I just pull that down, and now that loop is centered on the other loop. If it were misaligned at this point, you can use the tool as a plier and come in with your, you know, with your chain nose pliers and straighten the loops. There it is. And again, mine are closed pretty well, but I like to work harden, and especially on a design like this where the integrity of the design needs to everything be straight, lined up, parallel lines. I just take a second to do that. So I am going to make all my little bridges with all these beautiful colors, and when I come back, I'll show you how we turn our loop on the end of the memory wire and start to string everything onto the memory wire. So it will just be a second for you. I am going to make a bunch of little bridges. Okay, all my little bridges are created, and I have them lined up the way that I want to string them on my bracelet. And I've taken a small length of my pink tourmaline soft flex bead stringing wire. It's the medium 49 strand, and this color is just perfect for these beads. And this is my little looping beads, and I took a gold filled number 2 crimp tube. I also get these from the Soft Flex company, and I used my magical crimping plier, which turns a crimp tube into a little tiny bead. And I'm gonna string this with some gold seed beads to continue what I've done on here, and then do this loop on the other end, and that's going to be my closure. But I'm going to set this aside and get some of my bridges strung onto the bracelet first, just because I'm not completely certain about how long I need my loop to be. So to get an idea of that, I'm going to get some of the stringing done. The second to the last bridge on either side is going to be the bridge that contains my closure elements. So this one here, I have strung the shank of my button right in between my beads. There was a little bit of on and off with the beads to get this to be the same length as my pattern, and I did end up choosing this button because of the size of the shank. The seed beads that I wanted to use needed a much smaller shank so that the button didn't slide up and down on the bar. So I ended up choosing that one. I really loved both of these, but in the end I felt like this one did not, when I put it on the beads, not enough contrast. It just didn't make enough of a contrast. And this one had a really large shank. As much as I love the way this looks on these beads, I would have had to put like a check glass round on either side, which I could have done, but I really like this one. I like the contrast. I like that pop of gold and how ornate it is laying on top of those beads. So that is that, and I'm gonna start off with a snub nose plier, And if I didn't mention earlier, I can't remember because honestly, it's the next day, you guys. My son had medical appointments and I had to set my project aside. And then we saw friends for dinner. And I even said, I didn't even want to go out today. I was working on a project and I wanted to stay home and just do this. But if I didn't mention that when you cut your memory wire, you need memory wire cutters because this is stainless steel cable and you will absolutely destroy your good cutters. And also I use these snub nose pliers you can use them for other things too, but they're really great for memory wire. And that also does not put stress on your finer round nose pliers that you use for finer wires. And what I have also found is that turning a loop on the memory wire toward me gives me a little bit better control. And I'm also going to be using the smaller of the two mandrels. So you have the choice of a really small loop or a larger loop. And also I'm going to do at least a double loop. You don't have to, you can do it one turn, two. I sometimes even do three. And I know that it takes about an inch of memory wire with the small mandrel on this plier to turn 3 loops. So I actually think I might just turn 3. Let me turn this the right way because I do want to scroll toward me. And I'm going to put that in the plier so that I don't feel so that the end of the memory wire is not poking through, and that way I stand a chance of this being in the turn and not being sharp. And then I'm just going to roll this toward me, reposition. I usually get it started and just roll it toward me. And I'm going to just do a little bit at a time and just keep going until I have 3 coils. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing on this one, and I am going to start stringing. So there's not really an easy way to do this. Okay, I just resituated my little bridges so that I can start on one end and string to the other end, and I just kind of made a little pattern. I did less red in my bridges than I did the pinks, so and I want the red to be kind of interspersed in the pattern. Okay, I did kind of decide after I settled on my pattern for stringing in between the beads that I was going to see if it would be easier to just string one round and then do my parallel bar going through everything. So we'll see. Haven't tried that yet because, as I said, the stringing is a little bit awkward. And I also did need to make a couple more bridges. And also I have changed my pattern a bit. When I started stringing them on, I did change it, and it's actually a little bit more random. And I can see that I have made a mistake in stringing right here. So I'm going to repair that. But I think that at this point I am ready to create my little loop. So I'm just going to make that little repair in the stringing. I missed some of my spacer beads. That's happened to me a couple of times this week where I am sharing it with you guys and then see that I made a mistake. So I'm just going to gather these little guys up and put it back on in the right way. Okay, so it's looking really good. I am going to just guesstimate. So let me just see if I can show you. On this side, I did my shank of my button strung on the second to the last bar, and I'm going to do my loop on this bar here, and it will be the next thing that I string, and then this will be my last one. And so I am totally going to have to just guess at the size of my loop. And like I say, this does not look like much right now because it's disconnected on the other side, but I am thinking, let me string a little bit of my loop and then I'll kind of, this is going to be totally make this with your heart because, as I said, I didn't do a prototype type. So I'm going to cut this open and just create kind of a similar pattern to what I've been doing. Maybe 3 of these, and then a gold seed bead, and I was debating if I wanted to do 3 and then 2 and then a gold seed bead and then back to 3, just kind of alternating the pattern that I've already created in my other stringing. That's kind of pretty. Okay, I'm gonna go with that. So I started with 3 and I ended with 3, and that when this is going to be my loop that goes around my button, it puts 2 beads at the top of the loop. And so now I'm going to crimp this side, so another number 2 crimp tube going right on, and make a loop and go back down through the crimp tube. I already know that my 49 strand will not go, my cut end will not go back down through these really small beads. So I'm just going to make a loop, try to match it to the other side. I did it very small because it's going to string onto the bridge. And I don't want it too tight. That looks great. And now I'm going to come with my magical crimping plier and put that right in the center, that tube right in the center. If you don't feel that it's in the center of that only divot in this tool, you won't get a good crimp. And sometimes it's just a matter of finding that position. Like, I still don't feel that it's in the center. There it goes. Okay, and close the tool. So now I pinched the 4 corners of the tube, or made 4 corners, and now make sure again when you go back in the opposite direction that it is in the center, and now close in that direction, and now just keep it in that little well and go around and around a few times. The first few closes that you do with the plier, you can feel it smashing, but then it feels like you're not doing anything, and that's indicative that it's now a bead, and a bead that fits in that little well like that. And then I'm just going to trim and add this to my little bridge that I'm making. Oh, I want to get that closer. Much better. Okay, so I was just guessing at a pattern on here, so I did 3 seed beads of gold, and then what did I do? 6 seed beads, and then I'm going to thread one of my loops on here, and then let's see, maybe a gold. I'm gonna have to play with this a little bit to get this to look just right. I'm just playing with my pattern a little bit. That one is just about perfection. So that's my little pattern for my loop closure. And now I'm gonna do the same thing again with my 1-step looper. Just put it under the mandrel. My wire's a little short, it won't quite reach the guide hole in the tool, but that's okay. I'm gonna close gently just so that I can have a look at everything, make sure my beads are where they need to be. And I want to turn this loop and make a loop. Whoops, it flipped in the tool. There, I got it. Close, pull that down, and let me just align my loops while it's still in the tool. And I'm just going to take care of work hardening, just making that. Yep, it looks great. So that's my funky little bracelet closure, and it is going to get strung next. Find my end where I was working from. Okay, and the open side up. And now I'm going to repeat my same spacer pattern, which is 2 pink, a gold, and 2 pink. And then my last bar. And then I ended with, I'll do the same thing I did on this side, which is 3 pink. I just didn't want the wire of my bridge to be right up against the loop. And another reason that I like to end with a few seed beads on a bracelet like this, if it happens on this one, I'll show you, but if you need to break one, you know, smash it, or, you know, break it to buy a little bit more space when you turn your loop, it's nice to have that little bit of an option. So I know it is really weird looking, looks like a sea creature, and probably difficult to see where it's going, but I think this is going to work. So this loop, when the other side is strung, will go over the button and, you know, keep the bracelet on. So I'll talk to you about that, but like, you don't even always need a closure on a cuff bracelet with memory wire, but if the beads are a little bit heavy, it depends on how much you ended up stringing. It could be that every time you move your arm, the beads pull the bracelet off of your arm. So on these wide cuffs where I've done so many bridges, over the years when I've done them, I've pretty much always found that I needed to come up with a way to do a clasp. So I am ready to make my loop here, and I know that I need I know, as I said earlier, just from experience with the small mandrel on the plier, I know that I need about 1 inch of wire to do 3 coils. So I have to remove a little bit of my memory wire. I couldn't think of it. I think I need another coffee. I couldn't think of the word memory wire. Right about there with my memory wire cutters. And make sure to hold on to my beads so they don't go flying, and make that cut. And now I'm going to use this as my measurement and remove the same amount from my other coil, because I had them exactly the same, or pretty close to exactly the same when I started working. Put my ruler away. So I'm going to use this to see how much to remove from my other side of my cuff. Just line it up. And get it right there. So now I am going to turn a loop right here, and I'm going to do the same thing where I'm turning it toward me. I've just found that I have a little bit more control, and making sure that I'm also on the small side of the snub nose plier. Just start rolling it back. You can roll these in any direction that you want as well. I like them going on the outside because then it's not cutting into my arm, but you can also roll it the other way too if you want to. Just right down to my beads. It looks funny. Looks a little funny, but this is so cool. When the other side is on, I think this is going to work to loop over this. So pretty. Okay, let me string the other side. So it's going to be the same thing. I'm going to start on this end and start with 3 of my pink seed beads. I'm just going to mirror exactly what I did on the other side and picking up, started with 3 seed beads and picking up my my bridge, the loop of my bridge as I go. So here I'm just going to have to repeat my pattern, and it's funny, I did find that with the memory wire it was a little bit easier to pick up the beads from my mat, even with the little texture. So it's a little bit faster to do it this way. So the pattern is 2 seed beads, a gold, 2 pink, 2 pink, a gold, and 2 pink. And then just, you know, be careful that you don't miss a bridge, because then you have to restring if one is hanging off, and then just go through that loop of the next bridge. And I'm just going to keep going like that, 2 pink, a gold, 2 pink, and pick up the next bridge. And make sure that you're looking at parallel lines too when you do this, so that you put your, it's a little bit easy to get tangled up in this, but it's going to look like that. As I keep going around, it's going to look like that. Okay, I think I am ready to turn my final loop. So I'm going to turn this around so that again I am rolling toward myself. And I think this closure is absolutely gorgeous on this bracelet. I just love it. Just before I turn this loop, I just want to make sure that everything is pushed down, that nothing got caught up and there's no like weird space. And it looks pretty good. Okay, same thing, started off with the small side of my snub nose plier, and I'm just gonna roll it back. Okay, I had to pause because this is stunningly beautiful. It's so amazing. I love this clasp idea. It's, you know, a little bit to hold on to, but not difficult at all once you work out your pattern. So in fact, I pushed my other bracelet up my arm. Let me take this one off that I was wearing and show you. This is gorgeous on. And I was playing with it to see, it's so easy to clasp. I was playing with it because, you know, you normally think the clasp down here, but it's so pretty that I think I will probably always turn it so that it's this way on my arm. And so why I paused is because I was trying to debate if I wanted to do some charms on my simple loops where they end, and of course I do. So this box was so packed with really beautiful hearts and all kinds of check glass shapes. So if you didn't see my unboxing, this is some of the things that were in the box. These little fluted rondelles, this beautiful heart, these silk opaque drops. I could mix silver in with this, but I think I'm going to keep it all gold. I could have done flowers, but in the end I chose my second little heart I used the other one in my first project that I did. So again, I will link that video if you did not see it. So there were 2 of these in the box. So I just made a little stack, and then another little stack. I pulled a brass rondelle spacer and just another little stack. And let me grab my 1-step looper and put a simple loop on this one. So I'm just going to do 2. I'm going to do them on opposite of my turned, coiled loops. And I'm going to attach them with jump rings. I just like that extra little dangle. So I'm going to make sure this is closed really well. I'm so excited about this bracelet. It is so beautiful. I have had played with the idea of this design in my head, and I wasn't sure if I could execute it, but I have to say I highly recommend it. It's really easy to put on and off. This is probably a bracelet that it's so lightweight because of all the 4mm beads and the seed beads that probably you could do this without doing any kind of a closure. But I love that for a cuff. I love the oval memory wire, and I love that for a cuff. I don't know if the camera is showing you that little bit of flexibility, which, sometimes cuffs are very stiff. And this one is just, has a little malleability. I'm just in love with this bracelet. I can't stop playing with it. So let me decide where I'm going to attach. I think I'm going to put one on this loop and then go to the opposite loop on the other end of the bracelet and attach a charm. So on this one, I'll put this little red heart stack, and I'll put my blush pink with the red wash on the other side. You could open your simple loops, of course, and attach it directly to the loops here, but I like the extra dangle that you get when you add a jump ring to a thing like this. It's great. Whoops, I got my jump ring stuck in my tool. There we go. Make sure, did I close it well? Oh my goodness, I just love that. I love the little hearts dangling. It'll be pretty no matter which way I turn it, but it's so easy to clasp and it's just so gorgeous. I just love it. I am going to do one more thing just to add quality to this piece. I am going to take my Permalac protective coating. This is the semi-gloss, and I am going to brush it over the coils that I have turned on this memory wire because it is plated and it will tarnish. My jump rings and all of my wire bridges are with my Soft Flex wire that has an anti-tarnish coating, so I don't have to worry about those. But I also used brass head pins that are only plated, and I think I'm even going to brush this over my check glass button just because the metallic finishes on a bracelet can sometimes get scratched, especially if I ever turn it where the button is down here and it's, scraping on tables and things like that. So I'm going to brush it over all of that, and then even my little ball head pin, because it's just a plated little head pin and I like them. They're great, but I want my piece to stay shiny and pretty gold. My disc spacer has an e-coating, so it does not need it, but this Permalac is one of the best inventions since sliced bread. It's so great. I love the way this bracelet turned out. I feel like it has a lot of quality, but it's easy to do beautiful designs when you have great beads to start with. And these check glass beads from Dollar Bead Club are absolutely wonderful. I love getting all of those strands every month, and this month was amazing. So check my description box. I will put links to Dollar Bead Club. I have a discount code. You can use it either on the annual membership so that you can shop the website as much as you want and everything is $1, or you can use it for your first subscription to get a discount from your first month's box of the subscription. So I thank you so much for watching. I hope everybody's safe and well and having fun on your beading mats. See you in the next video.